Hey, 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 hey. All right.
Hey,
What's up, y'all? So I see that Lou is here. Lou, I just love you. You are like such a rider. Can you hear and see us okay, sis? I see Brett. Peace. Shout out to our Make It Happen family. Awesome. Okay, yes. Wonderful. So everybody can see and hear. I'm Akila, and this is Tirsa.
hi
Hey,
everybody.
hey. And this is so good. So we're going to pay attention to the chat and whether you are joining us over Peace, Anna Maria. Yes, so glad you're here. Whether you're joining because you're part of our Make It Happen family on Patreon, or you're part of the Fear of the Free Child Village, or you saw this on Instagram, we are so glad that you are here. We're going to take a few minutes. Yes, yes, Lou. We're going to take a few minutes to let folks come through. Um, I also want to do introductions because I find that as much as I feel like we family for newer folks, I don't want to put that weight on you to figure it out. So I'll start with myself. I'm Akila. I'm an unschooling mom. I'm also an unschooling organizer, so I like to talk about it out loud. I have my special rocks that I have in everything that help to keep me grounded. And I really believe in the work of raising free people and try to find community and conversation around it. And I'll let Tirsa tell you a little bit about her stews.
Hi everybody. It's Tirsa. I'm Tirsa McQueen, and I am also an unschooling mom to four free Black children. I got three boys over here and a teen daughter, and we've been in this thing like since 2015. And I have a Twitter feed at Tirsa J. So go follow me there, where I'm always talking about unschooling, answering questions, anything you guys need. Because I've been in it for a little while, and I got some teenagers, so you know I've been doing this thing. So
That's
we're
a
gonna
good
work it out.
combination.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Peace, Vanessa. I see you. So glad you're here. Reka, so glad you're here. Oh gosh, let's see. Vi. I don't know Vi, but I'm glad you're here. Yes, Elizabeth from LA. Wonderful. Okay. Yes, Regina, this is absolutely being recorded. Yes. We also have the capacity to bring one, maybe two other people on screen to talk about some of these things. I'm not very tech savvy, so I'm gonna try. So if it doesn't happen, please put your question in the chat. Peace, Kate. So glad you're here too. Yes, yes, yes. So I definitely want to start by inviting us to call into the space because this work can feel so vulnerable sometimes, and there are a lot of feelings around guilt or shame or fear or doubt, control, anger, all of the different emotions, all of those things, as y'all know, when we're dealing with ourselves and young people, they can come up. So I definitely invite you to take a moment to call into the space, whatever energies tend to support you when you're going through something that's going to call for a sort of emotional rigor. Okay. Like today's my mother's birthday, Val, and I'm feeling her energy all up and through our today because I think it makes me look more like her. Um, yeah, and I have my rocks for that same reason. I collect rocks from all over, and they bring me that sense of like connection and moving through the earth. And so, think of a name of a person or a thing that helps you to feel grounded or rooted. And I want to take a minute to allow for that. Yes. Peace, September. So glad you're here. Becky, yes, welcome. Okay. So, this particular conversation, Tirsa and I'm going to give it a lot because she brings out like my wild out energy. Like, yeah, that's how I feel every time I talk to Tirsa about this. And she's such a source of affirmation for me because so much of this work, people tend to want, myself included, when I started, want a process, like to find out about what the process is, whether they want it from somebody or they want to define it themselves. And my experience has been that so much of what I am learning and unlearning as somebody committed to raising free people it is not so much about the processes, but it's about developing a practice. And
Yes.
it's something that Tirsa and I are very familiar with, how that looks for us.
Yes.
And we wanted to really just name that and talk about that, because the schoolish idea that if we can find the right process, then we will have the things that we need, and we'll be able to listen the right way and control the right way. And
Yep.
right, that
Yes, it's all about control.
yeah,
Yes. I'm so glad you said control, because that's what it is. It's so much of us trying to find the right process, the right way to do things is a schoolish mindset, even within this unschooling space, even if within this self-directed space, because we are still trying to find the steps. Just like we're coming from a schoolish mind again. We're like, just give me the steps and I will just do these steps and then I can control the outcome. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of that is what I have to let go of a lot in my deschooling, is thinking that I can control how these kids are going to turn out. Like I don't have the control. I have influence, but I do not have control. These are their own people.
Yeah.
You know, they're my children as far as I have responsibility for them, but they're not mini me's. They're their own people.
Yeah.
So, you know, they control their own direction. They control, and I'm just here to help them with my influence. Tell them the things that they don't know because I have experience.
So then what does that look like if we're doing that from a space of not trying to apply the idea of process to something that is more of a practice? So let me give you an example of how that showed up for me. And if you're in our Make It Happen family, you've seen maybe some of this in some things that I've shared. So when Chris and I first finally honored what Marley and Sage had been talking about for about 2 years, and we withdrew them from school, withdrawing them from school is an example of a process, right? So even though that process had a lot of emotional components to it, it took us 2 years to make that decision and to trust it enough. We didn't really trust it a lot. We just trusted it enough to do it. That was a process. We told the teacher, and then we went to the place and we fill out the forms and, you know, all of that. And we registered as homeschoolers in our state. That's a process. It has a definitive starting point, and sometimes a process has a definitive ending point. And it has specific things that you do that are like a domino effect. When you do this, this happens. When you do this, this happens. That's a process. That can be really comforting and also really useful and sometimes really necessary, right? The difference between that and a practice is that a practice is usually a result of what happens as a result of a process. It's usually a result of a series of processes. So when we first pulled Marley and Sage from school, Chris and I became very process dependent. We were like, okay, they didn't like these things, so we're going to do this instead. So our process of helping our children to learn looked like this assignment and this much free time and this much screen time, and right, a very specific process. What happened was, fortunately, while we were enforcing the process, we started to recognize the practices that Marley and Sage already had in place, using their free time. What things did they do? Or how did we respond to things that they tended to do? What were our practices at home? What were their practices at home? What happened when we did something different in a practice? How was the outcome different? Did they respond to us differently? Did we respond to them differently? It was so moment by moment, and it was specific to each child, right? And Tirsa has more children than I do, so she could really talk about their.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I think that it is okay to start that way, because that's how I started too. Like I just knew that I wanted to do something different. Yeah. I knew that, but I didn't know what to do. Right? The schools laid out for me. That's what everybody's done. I didn't know any other Black people that were homeschooling, so I didn't have any examples of people who were doing this. So I did the same thing you did. Actually, Phoenix asked me. That's my oldest son. He's 15 now, but he was about 8 then. He said, "Can I try homeschooling?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Okay." I mean, like, okay, fine, like we'll try homeschooling. And I didn't really think that he was going to still want to do it after the school year was over. And so I started, back to school shopping because you think these kids are so little, they don't know what they want. That's how I was thinking. So I take him, I'm going back to school shopping. He said, Mom, why are you going back to school shopping? I told you I'm homeschooling this year. And I said, oh, okay, so I guess we're doing this. So
Yeah.
then I get on the internet, and so I did all the things you did, contacted the school, and we lived in Texas at the time, so all you had to do was let the school know that you wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I remember all of the anxiety that I had, like you said, the fear. And then we started school at home. Basically, it was just what we knew. This is what we knew to do for education. So we just started school at home. But exactly like you're saying, that was the process. But then the practices just emerged from what we were doing because we had enough, I don't know, respect for our children to just observe them and see what was working and what wasn't. Where were the pain points, day to day? What were the things that were making them cry? What were the things that were making? It's like, well, we did this to be free. This doesn't feel free.
Yeah.
So we need to keep doing more things that gets us to that freedom.
And that feeling of the things that get you to the freedom, that's how you're going in the direction of the practice. So when Tirsa says it's okay to start there, that's where some of us started. I want to push on those boundaries a little bit and say, of course it's okay to start there. Whatever you're doing, if you're doing it based on listening to what your children are saying they need is a good place to start. Peace, Jenny. Yes. Dominique, hey. So, but what I also know is that with a lot of things that we do, we start out with what we know. But what I'm trying to make sure is that we know that there are more options besides just
starting. Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you got to be in spaces, either in a space yourself or in community where that sort of thing is affirmed, which is what we're trying to do here. To say to you, for example, you might have a situation where you don't need to start with school at home because your child has made really clear that that's not what they need. So maybe where you start, even if you feel like they need a particular type of education and you feel like your idea of respect for your child is the opposite of Tirsa's and mine. It's not how you respect them is to make sure they learn what they need to learn. I hear that. I've been there. What we are trying to bring into the mix is that for everything that you know right and that you know they need, you're also drawn to something like unschooling or raising free people or whatever term you have for it because something isn't working well. There are areas where you feel like there's a disconnect. The trust isn't there between you and your child in either direction. So sometimes what you can do is instead of filling the gap by doing school at home, stop.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. You got to wait.
You can stop. You can call it deschooling. That's comforting for a lot of people to be like, okay, we on our little deschooling 3-month thing. Summer is coming up. That's a good safe space for a lot of people to start. But you start with stoppage. Stop. Put a stop on a thing and you just pause. And what happens there, it feels like you're doing nothing. I know for me, it definitely did because I was super, super schoolish. I'm still schoolish, but a lot less now. And I was like, yeah, but I want to feel like, we in a mix. But when I stop, what that allows me to do is recognize, right back to what Tirsa was talking about, the control. It made me realize so many of the things that I was doing under the guise of a responsible parent who respected my children and education and blackness and those things were about control.
It is. That's what it is.
Hear that. That's a great place to pause.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, because, I love that you just said that you should stop and that it feels like you're doing nothing. But we got to press back against that feeling that we're doing nothing. Because where does that come from?
Yep.
Because even if that was a big one for me. because exactly like you were saying that when you go from, okay, we go, we got to get up in the morning, we got to get the breakfasts made, we got to get the lunches made, we got to make sure the homework's in the book bag, and there's so many processes, right? When you go from all of that to nothing, there's, okay, we're just chilling now, like this is what we're doing, it feels so foreign and scary, and it makes you feel like, am I doing the right thing? Because we're so conditioned to believe education is what we can see, right? People are learning when we can see what they're doing. But what's going on in your brain? You're not doing nothing. A child that's sitting down watching a show or just playing a video game, they're not doing nothing. A child that's sitting on the couch, you don't know what's going through that kid's mind. You have no idea.
Exactly.
So to say that it's nothing. Matter of fact, Phoenix, he told me the other day, because I still, in my schoolish mind, he was pacing back and forth. That's what he does when he thinks, right? And I noticed that the trash needed to be taken out. So I said, Phoenix, you're not doing nothing. Take the trash out. He said, Mom, you don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what looks like nothing to you. You don't know. I'm walking around and I'm thinking, I'm pacing and I'm thinking, exactly. I'm doing something. Just because it looks like nothing to you. Like, right? Yes, like, oh, I said, you're not doing nothing, just take the trash out. Like, yep. He's like, no, that's not how this is going to work.
You're not seeing nothing.
Yes, you're not seeing nothing, right?
Because it brings me into, just like a lot of my own newer discoveries about somatics and recognizing the ways that some things I don't know and a lot of things that I did know intuitively, which is what so much of unschooling does for me. It's not really like aha moments. It's more like, like whatever I've known and felt gets to show up in a way that I can be with it. It's not a new shiny thing. And that's what I hear so much when people connect with Raising Free People work. It's not so much like, man, I never knew that, or I didn't think about it. It's like, I knew that shit. I knew it, but I just wasn't connecting to it, or I wasn't, right? So it's like a lot of this work is to recognize and accept and even celebrate that we don't know. As Phoenix said, Mom, you essentially, as adults, we are not in a position to gauge learning because we are so indoctrinated into schooling. And for me, that is something that helps me to respect my daughter's boundaries and to recognize the moments when I will be like, you're not even doing nothing, and recognize, for example, with somatics, like, oh, I process through movement too. That's why when somebody's recording me, they're like, Akila, can you stop? This is how my body is. So I am doing things, and I make circles in particular, and that's old as hell. And it's very much something that I'm doing. Or when I get up, when I feel upset and I put my feet down, right? And he's pacing because he's thinking and processing. In a classroom, you would never be allowed to just walk around. So we check that off as, you're not doing anything. Meanwhile, it is such an ancient way of getting into the connection of your body and mind and calling in that you now, through the tutelage of your child, you get to be back with that and say, yeah, my bad. Also, can you take out the trash?
Oh, absolutely. Exactly. Also, when you get done thinking and pacing, can you please take the trash out? But I had to say,
but go ahead.
But I said, you're right. I mean, what else can I say? I said, you're right. I didn't know what you was doing. I can't put my own thoughts and feelings onto another person and say that, they're not doing anything. Like the audacity of me to say that to somebody.
Right. And so, and that's also, I think, an example of when we talk about what a practice looks like. So in that instance, we might say, well, okay, but our process is you have this much time to do these things as long as you take the trash out by 5, right? Those are chores. That's how that's set up. That's our process. A practice the way that it might shift to a practice over time is that Tiersa might notice, because she observes Phoenix without interrupting consistently, she might notice that typically around 4 and 6 p.m. ish is the time that he's up and doing these things and walking around a lot and processing, even if it's just this particular week. So then, because they're in the mode of practicing and being in partnership together, she might say, actually, the only day that the trash needs to go out by 5 is on Fridays because the trash people come at 6 o'clock. So if he's doing what he's doing, do I need to say anything, or do we need to shift the chores this week to meet what's actually happening in real life, the way that I had to shift this around and say, Tirsa, can you log in because I need to leave the house unexpectedly? Mm-hmm. This is how we move from the process of having a well-oiled machine at home where your children are respectful and do all the chores over to a practice where your child sees you humanize them and humanize yourself, and then say, oh, now I understand what's happening here. Even if they don't necessarily do the trash the time they're going to, we're building a relationship that isn't about trash. It's about communication. Yes. It's about trust. It's about agility, and it's about respect. Right?
I was about to say everything that you just said. I really was. I was going to say that this is about building a relationship. It's wonderful that we have the type of relationship where my son can say to me, Mom, you don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I was not in a position to say that to my parents. You know, I think about the fact that, you know, when I'm doing something, if somebody comes and interrupts me, I don't automatically switch from what I'm doing to what they want.
Exactly. Matter of fact, you know, I'm like,
yes. Like, don't you see I'm working on something? You know, but as parents, it just seems like we have the authority to come and stop someone in the middle of their process to tell them what we want them to do, and that should supersede what they're doing right now. That's not respect. That is not respect to someone, you know. So I had to learn that, and I have a good relationship with them now. That was built over time. Mm-hmm. That if you say something to me, Phoenix, if you push back, if you push back, Mom's just going to reflect. It's not going to be who you talking to, boy? You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be, oh, hold up.
Yeah.
You know, because we have a relationship that's built on trust and communication. So if I say something to him, he knows he can say something back to me.
Yes.
And then I can reflect, and it's a wonderful thing. It's like, oh, because that gives me more self-awareness into my own self and to see what work I still need to do on myself.
The term reflection, because that's another thing that feels like nothing. You know, it can feel like giving up or giving in. You know, for me, a lot of it was about like giving in, because that's my own baggage. Even before I became Marley and Sage's mama, I was so like, yo, you know, I didn't want to feel like I was surrendering or giving in. And I heaped that right onto my parenting. So it was very powerful for me when you use the word reflect. You say, I'm just going to reflect. That's why I keep saying, you know, the things I say out loud is so much what I say to myself. Like Marley and Sage will tell y'all, because I say it out loud in the house. Their resistance is my roadmap. Resistance is the roadmap. I have to say that so often because otherwise I feel sometimes like I'm giving in, which doesn't, you know, then I'll eventually come back around to that. But what I'm doing is actually I'm giving way, not giving in. I'm giving way. It's not surrender, it's passage. I'm giving passage, room, way for whatever it is that can emerge when we are actually listening to each other.
Yes.
As opposed to me making the decision that, yo, you're not listening to me, and my job is to make sure you listen to me, because that's where I used to come from and still sometimes come from.
Oh, yes.
But because of that trust,
right?
As you said, then they can call me on it and say, yeah, but it doesn't even feel like you're listening to me, or I didn't even finish what I was saying. And then I can be like, oh, what Tirsa said, let me reflect. And that reflection does not mean that I come back and like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. It's not about giving up or giving in. It's about giving way. Yes. And that's why I feel like reflection is such an important takeaway when we talk about the difference between the process of going from schoolish to something else and the practice.
Yes, I love that you said resistance is the roadmap. I love that, because I always say what I resist will persist. Whatever resistance I'm going to get, it's going to keep showing up over and over and over again, because I'm resisting it instead of letting go. Just like you said, I keep fighting this. Resistance means I'm fighting this. I'm
Yep.
pulling at something. So if I resist it, it's going to keep showing up in my life.
Yep.
So I
Oh,
need to,
I'm
exactly
sorry.
what you said.
I think I locked my family out downstairs. So Tia said, take it away. I'm gonna go open the door.
Yes, I guess you guys can go ahead, open the door, girl. So so I guess you guys can post questions here, and I will try to answer them. You know, as the to the best of my ability. Like I said, I have 4 kids. I have a 15-year-old son named Phoenix, a 13-year-old daughter named Shannon, and I have 10-year-old twins, Malachi and Elijah. So I've been doing this a long time. The older two, they had gone to school for a short time, and then, like I said, Phoenix was like, "I'm done with this." So, we pulled them out and we started on our journey to unschooling. Um, but the younger two, they only ever went to kindergarten. So I'm telling you, they are free. They are free. So I see a question. I don't know if it was for me, but Regina says, when you say in your podcast, this isn't for everyone, would that include kids that don't want to do it? See, to me, the whole thing is that it's consent based. So unschooling for me is not about if you're at home versus if you're at school. In my opinion, and I know some people disagree with me, you can go to school and unschool and still have the philosophy of an unschooler, because the kid wants to be there. If the child wants to be there and they want to leave, they know that they can leave, then you're still unschooling. So it's not about doing something versus doing unschooling versus not doing unschooling. It's about consent. It's about saying, I'm doing this because I want to do this. I'm not forced. It's not coercive. It's not a coercive environment. So yeah, I think that you could still do it even if the kids go to school, if that's where they want to be. Someone said, how has your unschooling changed, if at all, as the kids became teenagers? It's gotten better and harder at the same time. Better in the way that, like I said, our relationships are really strong, because of how long we've been doing it, but harder in the way that they are really thinking about how they are going to go in the world and do things in the world. So they are coming to me a lot more for guidance about how they will, eventually go to college or start a career. And a lot of the advice that I have is still from a school mindset, which they pushed back on me because they're unschoolers and they think in different ways. So it's been a period of tremendous growth for me, as well as I try to help my teenagers go into the working world.
Hey, I'm back. And can y'all see both of us? I think I did something with the video. Can you see Tia saying, can you see me?
I can see you, but I can only see a small box of you now. I could see the whole screen. I could see half the screen me and half the screen you before. Yeah, you're smaller, Akila.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, for now, okay, so I don't want to hold up the time, so I'll just be small Akila here in the mix right while I figure this out. Okay, yeah, so I'm also wondering, I'd love to try this thing of bringing someone on the screen to see how that would work. And there are also questions that are showing up in here, right, Tirsa, because you were answering
Yes.
the question?
Yes,
Okay.
I was trying to answer some of the
I
questions.
see that in here too. Okay, yes. Okay, so I see Regina. Unfortunately, with them being older, they've been in school so long. Oh, and Regina, I have a video coming up for you because Regina is in one of the courses, and we're talking about some of the things that I'm definitely going to share, because the type of questions about whether you can unschool in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, right away, what comes up is just deeper questioning about what is it that you want to impart? What are the things about unschooling that you think your children, that would be useful for them? Because you can do that in other ways, because self-directed education has skill sets that are life skills that can be practiced in various ways. Now, if they don't want to be in school and you're making them be there, then I don't know how you would do those things together.
No, you can't. You can't do it. So let's just call spade a spade. You can't.
That's discord.
You can't. The whole thing is about consent. The whole thing is if the unschooling philosophy is it's self-directed. So if they self-directed themselves into a classroom, then it's still unschooling. But if at any time they have to be there, they don't feel like they can leave, then it's not self-directed anymore. Like, I'm being forced to be here. I don't have a choice. I am a grown woman. If I go into a classroom and I'm not feeling it, I'm getting out of there. So my child should have the same choices, because this is what happens when these teachers, these kids go into these classrooms and then, they know they can't leave. They know that they can't leave. So it makes the dynamic totally different when it's your choice. And everyone involved knows that this is your choice. I'm coming here because I want to be here, and I'm gonna leave when I don't feel like being here anymore. My son, Phoenix he does OutSchool, so he takes classes, and it's been a really good transition or a segue into going into a more traditional schooling environment, because he wants to be an engineer, so he will go to college eventually. So this has been a good transition because it's the same thing. You can go on OutSchool. They have thousands of classes. You can pick the classes that you want. You can make the schedule. He took one class last time, and in this next schedule, he's taking two classes. So he's got them all broken out, all the days that he wants to go, and then he can add more classes. He can not go anymore. That's fine. So it's finding something like that, if you want to have a little bridge to schooling and still have those processes. But he chose this. He wanted to do it. So that's the key thing. I'm not making him do it. He wants to do it.
Yes, and they can change their mind at any time. Yeah, so I feel there's a question in here from Nicole that I think also speaks to the question of what it looks like to show the skills, because that's really what I'm going to share in that video, that unschooling is part of a whole philosophy, a series of practices that are really rooted in self-directed education. And those are life skills that you can practice while someone is in a school environment if they want to be there. So again, a big part of that is trusting how learning happens, trusting that you can always go back in if they need all of these different things. And so Nicole's question here, I'm gonna bring myself back up because I still don't know how to double do it. If someone knows, please tell me. So now you should be seeing big me and little Tirsa, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so somebody, please, if you know, tell me, put it in there. But I'm gonna answer Nicole's question in the meantime. So can you speak on the beginning transition of building a trustful relationship with your children? What practices helped in the beginning of your transition, in particular, transitioning from being a domineering parent? Thank you. Welcome, Nicole. So for me, for sure, that backing up, what we talked about at the beginning of this, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but we will share the replay, to stop. Because the thing is that I was not in a position to do whatever I was doing before and say that I wanted a different experience with my children. I didn't know, I couldn't do both. I couldn't say, well, I still want you to do these things, but then I'm also practicing freedom. And I was not in a position to do both. I was too deep in control and fear to do that. So I had to stop. So we went from doing homeschooling essentially to nothing. And that's after my daughter's repeated resistance, pushback. Then we stopped. And that stoppage allowed us to pay attention to how much we didn't know. Nicole, it allowed for space for what I continue to call vast intelligence, which is intelligence that isn't rooted in something that someone taught me or something that I can even sometimes pinpoint that I learned from a particular place. It comes from listening deeper. It comes from giving way for what might happen if I don't do this. It comes from stopping enough of the pattern, the business as usual, to have the space to process the same shit you've been processing before, but to process it with more mental space. And then, so then it allowed for me to just recognize things that I didn't recognize before. It shifted my lens. It made me realize, for example, how Tiersa said, when Phoenix was like, you don't know what I'm doing. I am doing something. It made me realize, for example, why I would react to something like that. And mainly the reason was because I could have never said that to my mama. That, what does that have to do with what my child is saying? You know what I mean? So it's like little things like that. When you get enough of those, Nicole, you then start to trust, oh, the reason that this is happening is because there are things that I don't understand.
I can't see. Yep.
Yeah, it's not just that my kid won't do this or that my dad did this when I was 9. It's not just these things. It's actually a variety of things, and that we are actually equipped to process that, to synthesize that, and to use that in our relationships when we are not so busy with all of the things that school especially tells us that we need to be doing.
Yeah, and also I think for me, I definitely piggyback off of everything that you said. But in addition, for me, that stopping period, where I don't do anything, I was just observing. Like, I was looking at what the kids did now that we're not doing anything. Now that we stopped, what are they doing? What are they taking the opportunity to do? And along with that, I retrained my mind to see everything that they're doing and look at what they're learning through what they're doing. So anything that they were doing while we were stopped, like, so take, for example, one time I caught Phoenix and Shannon playing Scrabble. So I just watched them play Scrabble. And I thought to myself, what are they learning by playing Scrabble? And I thought that for every single thing I saw my kids do, what are they learning by this? When they wash the dishes, when they do chores, what are they learning by doing chores? What are they learning by playing video games? What are they learning on this television show? What are they learning? I'm not saying anything. Didn't say anything to the kids. I'm not asking them, what are you learning by doing that? I'm just thinking in my mind, because it helped me reframe my mind about what learning actually is.
Yes.
So then I began to know in myself and trust, like you said, that they're always learning. No matter what they're doing, they're learning, no matter what. So then it got me to this idea that it's not nothing. So for me to go back and be schoolish and tell Phoenix he wasn't doing anything, I was a little bit embarrassed, because I thought I had got past that, to tell, like, oh my gosh, my bad.
Yes, and
because
we see that we're embarrassed by it, because okay, it just humanizes us, and just really puts that into practice. Like, oh yeah, there are other adults will need this too. Yeah. I love that. And then I see too that there's a question in here about doing nothing. I really like that question. What does nothing look like? Thank you so much for that.
Right.
You're welcome, Nicole. We're going to continue to talk about this. So there's so many layers of what it looks like. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to continue to talk about it in future conversations. So to the question of what nothing looks like, I really appreciate that question. It feels like something that I want to write about right away. So a part of the nothing for me is to begin to educate myself, because the school of thought that I come from, the level of schoolishness and performative ways that are rooted in how I tend to show up, and that I'm currently unlearning, says that you're active and people know that you're actively doing something. And so that action was usually directed towards my children. What are they doing to ensure that something is happening here, or that people know that I'm making sure that my children get all the right things, when they were in school, the people being the teachers or whatever. Doing nothing looked like shifting my focus from how my children get their education to how I begin to get my education about the difference between schooling and learning. So for some people, that's lots of books. For me, it was lots of blogs and trying to find first chats, and then Facebook groups when I was involved in that, and then real person meetups. And I needed to just hear people talk about what the hell they meant by unschooling, And I was in a lot of like super white spaces at first, when you start looking around. So then I was like, hell no, this is not it. So then my attention shifted over to what Tiersa said, observing my kids. But in my instance, it wasn't questioning what might they be learning. It was more like, how do I feel about what they're doing, and then managing my feelings around that. So for example, the girls would be on YouTube for hours on end. And I was like, yeah, nah, bro. So like, so then as I was, oh, thank you. Yes, I'm seeing that you put something in here about the controls. Thank you. I'm going to look at that. So when I was, I shifted from doing manipulative shit to be like, I wonder what you might be learning 5 hours later. Can you maybe tell me if you went there? Or walking past the room and, or trying to turn off the Wi-Fi, doing shit like that, to being like, how really, like, how is this showing up in my body? What am I so frustrated by? What am I afraid of? And then I would make time, and Marley has talked about this too publicly, to say what my fears were, to say that to them. And then they gave me so much education around how informed they were about the very things that I was afraid of, which is basically cyber predators, right? I'm like, some man gonna be like, blah, 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 or woman, or non-binary, whatever, somebody. And my thoughts was that, what if they didn't know? And what if they were in danger? These sorts of things. Then they told me about some of the things that they have in place. And then I also shared some things that I thought were important. But mostly, those fears were mine because I'm so unfamiliar with the internet, but they have a different way with it. And because they're in a trustful relationship with their parents, over and over, especially when they were younger, when they weren't sure about something or they just came to us and asked us. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I would have been all sneaky because my mother had fears and I had fears, but they didn't operate like that. So doing nothing often looks like checking in with my own baggage and my own body instead of routing whatever is happening in the direction of my children. That's usually that's what it tends to look like for me, busying myself so that I have enough space and time to observe what's happening, and so that can then shift my lens and my understanding.
Being nothing for me, it was just trying to decolonize my thoughts. Just stopping because I don't know what to do. Let's just call a spade a spade. I don't have anything to put here. And so it's making me uncomfortable because I don't. So we went from this to what? Like what? So now what? Like, and it's extremely uncomfortable. So just sitting in that uncomfortable space and realizing, okay, this is where the change is going to happen. Because when you're in that uncomfortable space, that's when you start to feel like, okay, let me get past this. Let me feel my way through this. Just like you said, the feelings that I have associated with this. And also, I think that there was a little bit of, I don't want to say jealousy or envy at the fact that my kids are able to do this in a way that, and have these parents that are just like, okay, what do you want to do? Like, and working with you. And then you thinking back in your own mind, like, oh my gosh, like this is like so far from what I know that you don't know what to do. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, figuring out that I don't have to know what to do. I just have to go with what feels right and just go in that direction, and then just keep going with that direction. Because I'm a planner. Like, I like to have plans. I like to know what I'm doing, what we're going to do on this day. I like structure. And, I had to let my children make their own structure and come to me with, suggestions. Like, Mom, what do you think I should do about, I want to learn about this thing. What do you think is the best way to learn about that thing? Or, Mom, I think it would be helpful for me if I had a circuit kit. Can we get a circuit kit? Or, just realizing and understanding my role now as a mother. Because all the things that I thought mothering was going to be now are not what mothering is. Because I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So so now I have to figure out what is my role. And for me, my role is to provide them with the resources to do what they need to do. To do this unschooling life, to provide the resources as best as I can, to give you as much as I can, the space, the experience, the knowledge, hook you up with people that are already doing it, anything I can do, get you in a community of other unschoolers, buy you a circuit kit that you need, get you a computer that you need, just get you the things that you need.
Back
That's
up.
my role. Back up, exactly. Stop talking, mom.
Yes, absolutely. Right in when adults, I see that there's a question in here or a conversation going around. Rika, thank you. I still wasn't able to figure it out with the link that you sent, but I appreciate your effort. That thing about adults, right? The adult gaze, and the adult being me or their dad, Chris, is one thing. But what about when it's other people? And it's always other people, because we're in such an adultist society. We really do see children as sovereign land to colonize, like super treat childhood like prime colonization opportunity, that so much of our own perspective on like, oh, well, what's going on with your land over there? Like your kid isn't listening to you, or what are they doing? My kid is doing this and your kid isn't doing that. And, that gaze, as much as we want to, some of us, myself included, wanted to feel like, I don't care what I'm thinking, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. I completely did, because I think I may have written about this in the book. I don't know, but I've talked about it somewhere many times with the girls and their times tables.
My gosh, girl.
Right? That was a process. That's an example of a difference between a process and a practice. So I would make sure every time we were going to go to Jamaica that it's like, they up on their times tables, because I could deal with a lot of things, but I can't deal with people thinking that, you don't at least know this and that. So they were performative in that space. And on the other side of my mouth, I'm like, but you're your own person. Right. So like what I needed to do and what I continue to do is to ask myself that question. Someone in here said that you and your partner adopted mad question asking. Great, because it has saved my life so many times. One of the questions I started to ask myself when I was willing to be honest, to recognize that was shady, was like, who am I parenting? Who am I parenting? For me, that question was the difference between, am I parenting Auntie Lisa, who's asking me about why my child on this and this and that? Who am I building this trustful relationship with? If the answer is Marley and Sage, which it is, I don't give a damn if Auntie Lisa think that the girls are stupid and will never amount to anything or whatever. That's not who I'm trying to build a trustful relationship with. Does it mean that it doesn't trigger me? No. Does it mean that I don't feel or didn't feel afraid or offended or angry or nervous or doubtful? No, I felt all of those things. It doesn't take away those feelings, but what it does, for me, it's like you can't serve two gods, right? Like for me, the idea in this is that the God that I'm serving in this instance is a trustful, partner-centered relationship with the people over whom I have power, who are Marley and Sage. So just like with school, why I couldn't keep them in school and say that I'm raising free people. Now they can go back into school and I can still say that I'm raising free people for all the things Tirsa mentioned. So I had to shift over from the process of the freaking times tables over to that practice of trust to say, I do not care if you don't know 9 times 7. What I want to know, what I want you to know is that if you don't know it, I'm not going to be one of the people who make you feel less than as a result of that. Even if I think the times tables are important, they're not more important than building a relationship with you where sense of shame and fear is rooted in your parent from what you can accomplish or perform. Mm-hmm. And then it shifts that for me every time. I just ask myself, who am I parenting? And it comes back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the times table is like, oh my gosh, that is like people, I've had this also, it's been so many years, and a lot of course, people are going to come to you or come to your kids as soon as they find out that they are homeschooled or unschooled. They're going to start, what's 5 times 5? Like they always do it. They always do it. So I train my kids to say, because this happens so many times, I tell them, you tell me, what's 5 times 5?
Yeah.
Since you think I don't know, tell me.
Yeah.
What is it?
I'll wait. Yeah.
Yeah, just tell me what it is. We don't need to do. I'm not in school. Okay, I don't take tests. So what's 5 times 5? Oh, what's 5 times 5? Tell me.
Right. So I love that.
Yeah.
They're little.
Like, yeah, you want to teach me. You don't think if you don't think I know, tell me.
Yep.
You know, we don't have to do this. We don't have to play these games where, you know, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm racking my brain because it's also this people where they think that they have access to these children. Like you,
Yep.
who are you? You think that you could just come and quiz a kid? If somebody came up to me and I was like, yeah, I do that, and they try to ask me, so I'd be like, what?
Exactly.
And that's exactly what I told my kids to do.
Same way.
Yes.
Yes. And especially when they're younger. And I love that this is coming up because now, you know, my girls are 17 and 15. So it's good for me to come back to, you know, the things when they were younger. And that is what I used to say, a few different things. One, I used to say, you don't have to answer shit. Because I cuss. I've been cussing with my kids.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh yes.
First of all, you ain't got to answer shit. You just point over there at me or daddy. Boom, point. So when they were littles, we did that. You can point at us. Also, we say that you can also answer a question with a question. Why do you ask? Why do you think? And Marley was like, queen.
I can't wait.
Yo, and then Sage's way, because Sage is so like calm water, she would just be like, you know, or dismiss it or answer something completely different. Like I found it interesting to see that, but the point was that they knew that, going back to the thing about building trust, they knew that it was not going to be me or Chris to be like, go ahead, answer the question. You know, like how I used to be before, to be like, she gonna tell you she don't know because she's smart.
And that's about you. That ain't about them. Yeah, that's about you.
That's 100.
So, you know, that's why it is difficult too when you're trying to train your kids and teach them that they don't have to answer these questions, because they, you know, it's so much of the world is that kids have to do what adults say.
Yep.
You know, so this is a different mindset that we're taking, that you don't have to do everything. I don't want you to just blindly follow authority. If an adult asks you a question, you don't have to answer it. You can say no to adults. I want you to say no to adults, because they're going to be having you out here trying to do stuff that you really don't want you to do, and I don't want you to do. So you need to learn how to say no and push back, no matter who it is.
Exactly.
So it's just very important for them to feel like, you know, I can do that. And also, you know, it was difficult for them, though, with their grandparents, like going to visit with their grandparents over the summer, because it's like, you know, old folks, they'd be like, this is my house and you got to do what I say, you know. And so the kids is like, you know, I don't want to disrespect Nana and Poppy. I'm not trying to disrespect, you know what I mean? And this is the way they feel respected. So how do we navigate that, you know? And I said, just kick it back to me, just like you said. I said, just call mom. You know what? If they start doing that, just say, you know what? Can you call my mom right now? Just say it real respectfully and nicely. You know, I'd like to call my mom right now. And that's how we gonna do that.
That's what we need. And sometimes you have to do that even in the same house, especially if you live with other adults. Because I see that other question in here too about getting a partner on board. I don't know that I have advice. I don't have advice, period. What I try to do is just like share my experiences, because I don't know your partner. So that, you know, I don't feel like I don't have the information to make an informed statement about advice. But what I can say is that oftentimes when a partner starts to see the non-academic growth and progress of that young human, it can be easier then to introduce information that supports unschooling, right? So try to point out the things that you notice. If you're the person who made that decision to allow for that unschooling, to honor that right, then you can point out those things and say, you know, usually Shannon doesn't do this, and now I noticed that he did this thing. So then that makes, you know, so you can really just amplify the things that are happening. And you can also, I tend to bring up school wounds. So like with my family members who, when the girls were younger, were not on board, I really try to move it away from academics and talk about like the human emotion part, like what it feels like to be heard, what it feels like to be listened to, what things it's like, wow, I will say things, for example, when I was little, my grandmother, as traditional as she was in many ways, she also was such a supporter of me like speaking my mind. And I'm around so many other people who didn't have that one thing, and I see the difference that makes. So when I bring that up, oftentimes even the people who are like very children are to be seen and not heard, even if that's something they promote, when we talk about what that felt like as a kid to be heard, oftentimes that shifts the thing to say, yeah, I remember that for me. Or I remember when I looked into my grandmother's eyes or my granddaughter's eyes and they felt so seen. So much of this tends to go under the shroud of academics and what kids can learn, but really the emotional component about how trustful they can be to learn, how much you can trust them to learn, and how that learning shows up not just in their academics, but in their life skills, in their social skills, in their emotional intelligence. Those things are also things that we should, as people who do this work together, we should point that out so that we can normalize the importance of the life skills, not the academic skills. You could go to school anytime. You could learn some shit that you need anytime.
Yep.
But the emotional part, the lack of that, when you don't have that, whether you're 22, 32, 42, 72, that shit is going to keep you like this. And the people around you are going to feel that pain too.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I'm just so happy that you said that, it's the relationship, because this is unschooling. I started unschooling because my son said he didn't want to go to school anymore. But as the longer I'm unschooling, the more I realize that this is about the relationship, because I can't unschool and, the learning part of it, and then say, okay, now it's time to do these dishes. Now it's time to do, and then be authoritative in that way. Like, I have to combine those two. The more I got into unschooling, the more I realized, I also need to be a respectful parent and a gentle parent in order to make this work. I'm not going to be able to do this because if I don't do the whole thing. Just like you said, like, it's not just about the academic part. It's also about the relationship part. The relationship is the more important part. Because just like you were talking about, like when my youngest son, Elijah, when he went to kindergarten, he hated going to kindergarten. He would cry in the morning before he had to go. And I was just so distraught. I'm crying on my way to work because I had to drop him off. And when we finally pulled him out of school, he became happy. So if somebody says to me, like, well, how do you know it's working? How do you know I know my son's happy. I know he wasn't happy before. And he's happy now. Oh, there you go. You got the split screen back. But I knew he wasn't happy before, and he's happy now. So, like, like you said, he can learn all that stuff at any time.
Yeah.
But he's living his life right now. So should his life have to be miserable today? Does he have to wait until he's 18 so that he can be happy? No, he can be happy right now. He can learn that shit later.
Exactly. Okay? And as it turns out, it's not a one or the other situation.
That's right.
It turns out. But oftentimes you got to leave that situation before you can even recognize that. It's not an all or nothing in any of those places, even when we talk about the adult gaze, because you have children. I was one of them. That's how I know now. Who could get all the academic stuff, checklist, and be over here on some whole other shit that really needs to be addressed. But nobody's checking for that because you're checking off all the right things on that list. That focus on academics that people are talking about in here. Anna Maria brought that up too, with that focus. Like for me, it feels so backwards. Even the way that the educational sector or whatever the fuck it is, how it's set up, to me, you're so focused on the classes and the schooling with no knowledge of self, whereas you could be developing the knowledge of self so that if you choose to enter schooling, then you have so much of a clarity Not necessarily all the answers. I'm not saying you're like, oh my God, I'm awakened or whatever, but you understand how you learn. You know the things that you're interested in. You have practice being listened to so that the design of your education is actually informed by how you learn and who you are. That shit should come later, not you. We spend our whole freaking first 20 years or whatever it is from 6 to like 18 schooling, and then we spend the rest of our lives essentially deschooling and trying to come back to self, trying to draw on the vast intelligence, trying to move out of the confines of the ways that people have decided that, oh, you're good at this, so you're going to do this. We spend the rest of our lives trying to call in the very thing that we came into this world as.
That's right.
Yes. Right? So when we talk about unschooling, when Tiersa and I are on our platform shouting that shit from the mountaintop, please understand that what we're talking about, essentially, whatever wording you want to give it, is that we're talking about what it means to look at the practices that are in place in the humans that you love and have control over, and see what that looks like in relation to your own practices as what you consider a parent. And when Tiersa said that when she shifted from the process to the practice, she started to realize that she needed to look at the type of parent she was being, not the type of helper for homeschooling or whatever, the type of parent she was being. That's what we're talking about, because that's why parenting is a practice. There's no process. You can't buy the right parenting book. That's the same way with education. Despite what they out here telling us over and over, you cannot buy the books that are going to give you the thing that you need. That shit is a ecology. It comes from a variety of things. And if we can learn how to invite practice amidst our processes, because as Tiersa says, you start where you start, right? For some of us, you start where you start. But if you are not allowing for the education that comes from the practices that either show up when you shift things or the one that are already in place and just need space, you just gonna do another version of the same thing, and you will not build a trustful relationship.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because a lot of people come into unschooling as a way to, they think this is the education of the future. And they think that this is the way, that school is archaic and it's outdated. And so I'm going to unschool because this is going to give my kids a leg up over the schooled kids. And I'm like, no, you're still using control.
So much of that.
You're still using it. I didn't even think that it was possible to be unschooling and control. And I've seen it now.
Yep.
The longer I've been in, I'm like, wow, they're using unschooling to control these kids.
Yeah.
So you really have to, like you said, reflect on yourself and the processes and the practices that you need to develop in order to do this.
Exactly. And you don't need to know them in advance.
No, you do not. You don't need to know them in advance. You can find them along the way.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I'm doing. Shoot.
They are emergent, and we want to honor the time too. I really, this is so important, and it's the sort of thing that Tiersa and I are really trying to continue to make room to have more conversation about, because I want to make sure too that y'all are looking in the chat, because there's so much wisdom in there when we get together like this. Again, this is not, there are aha moments, and those are fine. But I really want you to remember too that amidst the ahas and waiting for the shiny thing that you can put on a quote thing, to also feel it. Because when you feel it, you will recognize that, yes, there are many things that you don't know, but there are also many things that you've been new. You've been new.
Yes.
You've been new. You just needed to hear it so that shit could be called up, and that you can trust yourself. Of course, you know what is best for your children. You might not know it up here. But you know how to get to it. And oftentimes, it isn't about what you need to do. It's oftentimes to stop the things that you've been doing so that you can allow for the practice to be integrated into your processes. I promise you.
Oh, yes. Everything you just said. It'll come. Because you got to slow down, and you have to allow it to come, just like you said. So much of that, all of that.
Yes.
exactly.
Thank y'all so much.
Yes, thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Me too. I'm hoping
This was
that
awesome.
remember if Crowdcast saves the chat. I think it does, because I'm going to make sure that that's available too. So much wisdom in here just from people's insights and connection. We really love and appreciate having these conversations, and we want your feedback about what's useful and other ways we can connect. I'm going to make sure that this video is up on my YouTube channel, and I'll make sure everybody gets the link to that. And Tier says, officially in our mix at Raising Free People Network.
Yes, I'm there, y'all. I am in here.
Yes.
I'm available to y'all.
Are going to be the norm. They're going to be the norm. I'll be in some of them, and I won't be in some of them. Tiersa will be at some won't, but we'll be able to do it more consistently. Yes. So thank you all so very much for being here and part of the conversation. And you're so welcome.
Yes, you're welcome, and thank you.
Yes, peace, peace.